Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where today we are making our predictions for the 25-26 season. Coming up, who is the shock team that we can see winning the lot?
History as well with Pep Guardiola when he faces difficulties with a club the next season. I think they bounce back really well.
Which widely tipped relegation candidate will actually survive?
With Keith Andrews there, he doesn't need to change too much from what has gone before.
And who has been the best signing made so far? It was my big shout at the episode, Brighton to finish 5th. I think Maxim de Kuiper will be brilliant at left back. Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. And joining myself and McCubbin today, we've got the best predictor in the game, Nieve. You will see these clips for the next year because we are doing our Premier League predictions. Nieve, are you excited about the return of the Premier League?
I'm so excited. I actually think this is the most excited I've been about the Premier League for years.
Oh, it should be epic. I cannot wait, mainly because my team's in it for the first time since 2017, which is very, very exciting. Guys, today we're going to talk about our top 4 and top 5. We're going to talk about our relegation candidates. We're going to talk about our best signings, worst signings, a few hot takes. We are literally covering all the bases. Let's start with our top 4 or top 5. Nieve, why don't you kick off? Why don't you go through 1 to 5? What sort of order do you have at the moment?
Yeah, so it's so difficult, isn't it? Picking between. I think there's 4 teams and it can be in any order. But I think I'm going to go for Man City 1, Liverpool 2, Arsenal 3, Chelsea 4.
Okay, so you're a big believer in the return of Man City.
Yes. Do you want me to say 5 too?
Yeah, why not?
Maybe 5's the one that's less obvious. Man United.
Really?
Huge.
That's
Maybe.
massive.
Okay. Let's start with, Man United's the big talking point really in there. Man United, you're really backing them.
Yeah, and why? No, do you know what it is? I think that it's funny because when you look at a lot of projects being built and they look at like strengthening the defensive unit and then strengthen their stability, but United are a team that, quite simply, to put it in simple terms, they needed goals and they've just gone and got the players that will hopefully for them get them goals. I don't think there's much more. There's more players that they could potentially sign. I know they're interested in Baleba, but I mean, as in, like, so far, and with the players they've got, I really don't think there's too much better they could have done. From what I've seen in the summer of clips here and there, they look really fresh. It just looks positive.
I mean, the lack of European football, I think, should really help. I mean, Mike, are you on the Nieve train of, 5th, 6th, 7th is possible, or higher? What are you thinking?
I think it's possible. And look at this stage, I'm just too scared about the midfield. I'm just a bit too scared about that still. And so, look, I would never have thought United would be anywhere near Baleba start of the summer. I also didn't think they'd be anywhere near Sesko or probably Mbermo for that matter either, if I'm honest. So I think, I'm a lot more confident of United finishing in top 9, top 8 now than I was at the start of the summer. 5th, I couldn't quite bring myself to put them 5th. I was planning to, for a joke, put them 1st. But no longer. But I also really like the attacking signings. I think like the Sesko one in particular is, obviously a huge statement of intent, and I think everyone's playing him down a little bit, which I think is good. He was wanted, by Mikel Arteta. Obviously he would have been able to slot into that Arsenal attack easier because that Arsenal attack already, it's just waiting for a centre forward to get in there. Whereas at United, he's probably going to have to work a little bit harder to create chances for himself. We still haven't seen on a consistent basis what, the Dorgu left wing back, Ahmad right wing back, how much productivity there is going to be from out wide in terms of crossing. And, we're yet to see, obviously Cunha and Mbermo link up on a game-to-game basis. But like Nieve was saying, yeah, like the signs look good. Like Dorgu's looked pretty good in pre-season. But again, I feel like maybe it's just because I'm a United fan, I tend to be a little bit pessimistic because we've kind of been there before with like promising pre-seasons and amazing summers. I mean, even last summer looked really, really positive, and then United had their worst season since the 70s. So I feel like I always take things with a pinch of salt. But like, if United finish top 8, that would be I think that would be, well, not great, is it? But it would be a vast improvement on last year. And, no matter what happens from now, they are certainly going to be a more fun attacking team to watch. than last year, because it kind of felt like, Amorim was fighting that losing battle of, he actually did make United better defensively when he came in, but it came at the expense of any real attacking flair whatsoever.
I think it's an interesting shout. I think it really does depend where. I think fifth maybe feels like an overstep at the moment, but if Newcastle lose Isak and they're struggling to land, they need two strikers really, because of Callum Wilson departing as well. They feel like they're starting the season really on the back foot. Villa haven't really made any first 11 signings, it doesn't feel like, but then they haven't lost that many players either. So again, the sort of team cohesion should, and really, it'd be almost embarrassing for Villa to not be looking a little bit smoother in attack than United to at least begin the season. But do I think Man United have better attacking depth than Villa across an entire campaign and don't have European football? Yeah, absolutely. So maybe there's a leapfrog there as well. But I think for now, Man United need to focus on even getting past the likes of Fulham and Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, who felt so much ahead of them last year. But you do look through their squad now, and I know midfield's a bit of an issue, but their range of centre-backs, I think, is really, really strong now. You expect Heaven and Euro to take a step forward as well. And then, as you say, like the attacking depth, from players that should really be stepping up now, even like a Mason Mount, and where does Bruno Fernandes fit into this as well? He had a brilliant back half of last season prior to a disappointing Europa League final. Maybe they can do something, but at the moment I have Man United more 7th, 8th. But Nieve, let's go back to your sort of top 4, and City were your number 1, I think ahead of Liverpool. What do you think gives the advantage for the citizens?
Again, it's just, I think until the ball starts to be kicked and stuff, there is real such fine margins. You're clutching onto anything. And I think that I really like the signing of Reijnders. I think it's such a facilitating signing as well for everyone else. I think the little glimpses of Cherki that I saw in the Club World Cup, I really like that. I loved his creation. And I think through that, there might be the domino effect of more goals from Haaland again when he receives the ball a little bit more and can sort of be the striker that he wants to be. Rodri will be coming back in September, I believe.
Yeah.
Which will be absolutely huge.
Rodrigo could be through the door as well, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. When Arne Slot came in, that first season, where it's not his team, but it's a settled team versus all these signings. Now, I don't know which is the more difficult task for him, but then I suppose City making the changes as well to the team, but perhaps less so. But it's the two of them are just, I put Arsenal and Chelsea. Do you know, I'll be honest with you, I literally, I picked Man City. I think history as well with Pep Guardiola, when he faces difficulties with a club the next season, I think they bounce back really well. Like, they don't just bounce back a little bit, they go all out, and it's quite ruthless. So I'm also sort of looking at that. So I'm really clutching at straws where I can to create a name at the top.
I think the only one, I've heard a few people say all 4 could win it. I don't think Chelsea personally can at the moment. I think they don't look strong enough at centre-back, especially on the back of that Levi Colwill injury. And Maresca has said, look, we want to bring in a centre-back. So it might well change by the end of the window.
Who have you gone for?
At 1, I've gone with Liverpool. Okay. I do think there are more doubts about them. Like, they had an almost faultless injury record in midfield last year. Like, Gravenberch, I think, started 37 games. McAllister over 30. Szoboszlai 2. If you take Szoboszlai out of the side because you're playing Wirtz more centrally, do you lose a lot of work rate in midfield? They still, as we film this, haven't signed a centre-back. So there are doubts about them. And, it's only the Community Shield. And actually, I looked up the stat earlier. Only one winner of the Community Shield since 2011 has gone on to win the league.
Really?
Which was Man City in 2019. God. So obviously no one's expecting Palace to win the league, but I don't think it's a disaster for Liverpool to lose a game on penalties. And people are making out that it was, a real tragic performance. I actually thought for huge swathes of the first half, they're absolutely amazing. And they went in with that with a midfield of Wirtz, Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones, which is not going to be their midfield either. I just think titles so often, particularly now with expanded Champions Leagues and expanded Europa Leagues, it's won by who can stay the course. And I do think Liverpool have phenomenal depth, even if they don't sign Isak. And then you could be looking at a late entry of the Premier League's best striker last year as well. So for me, it's Liverpool. But Mikey, are you throwing a third name into the hat?
Shall I go from 5? I've actually gone... Well, actually, 5's almost one of the contentious ones as well. I actually got Villa in 5th. Mm-hmm. I think mainly based off the fact that they've barely signed anyone, but they've also barely sold anyone. Compared to Newcastle, who could be losing Isak, they finished level on points last year. Unai Emery as well is just a brilliant manager, isn't he? And he is very adept at managing a European campaign. They made the quarterfinals last year. They had injury crises here and there during the season, and they still managed to finish strongly. And there were also parts of the season where they just weren't playing well. And I feel like that might happen again. Like Aston Villa might, they might be 11th in November and end up finishing 5th. So yeah, that was my logic with Villa, and especially the fact that it looks like Ollie Watkins is going to stay now as well. Their source of goals is there. You think Morgan Rogers as well, keeping hold of him. He's going to only improve. And then 4th, I've gone for Chelsea. And then 1, 2, 3. I think it will be really tight, but I have gone for Man City in 3rd. I think they are going to look a lot more exciting next season than this season, but a little bit like what you were saying, Nieve, there is just quite a lot of change there, quite a lot of young talent in there. I think they will come back, but just not quite as big a way as they'll hope to. And then I've gone Liverpool 2nd and Arsenal 1st.
Ooh, Arsenal fans are going to love that.
Yeah, a little bit like with my Aston Villa logic with Arsenal. I just think, compared to Liverpool and City, Arsenal are more settled, and they've made fewer signings, but they've just had clear upgrades in all of those positions. Obviously Gyokeres is a big upgrade up top, at least in terms of goal output, and also in terms of, Arteta now being able to pick between two very, very different strikers depending on what he wants in a particular game. Obviously, Havertz then becomes a depth option in midfield too. And then I think Zubimendi is one of the big signings of the summer. I just think his passing range, his ability to spring attacks quickly. People have been talking a lot about the left side of Arsenal's attack and stuff, but I honestly think someone like Zubimendi could be great for Gabriel Martinelli. I think we're sleeping a little bit on the fact that Martinelli in the past has been a brilliant Premier League left winger. And if Arsenal go for Eze and sign him rather than, say a Rodrigo or a more specialist left winger, then they will need to rely on Martinelli. And I think having someone like Zubimendi whose progressive passing is so good, I think could unlock Martinelli. So yeah, I think those two signings are absolutely huge. The Madueke signing, I think is great as a backup as well. So yeah, I think they just look more set. They've got more depth. Most importantly, Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly are gonna improve as well. So yeah, I just see them just about getting over the line this time. But it could be anyone. I think before the Community Shield, I was probably more hot on Liverpool, but then seeing that attack, I just thought, there is a lot of change there. And, if Salah's output drops as a result of Jeremie Frimpong taking up those wide positions more, then maybe there is a little bit more pressure on a lot of new players to produce. Liverpool may well sign Isak, right? But like you were saying with Gravenberch, I think also at centre-back, they just are still, they're so top-heavy now in terms of their depth. Whereas I think Arsenal have, a much more balanced squad. Their defence is easily the best in the league. And you look at Man City, their defensive problems were, all there to see last season. And do I look at City signings this year and think, oh yeah, they're going to massively improve defensively? No, I don't think so. They might do a bit, but I'm not convinced they're going to, suddenly have the best defence in the league. I think Reijnders will be a big help in terms of having legs in midfield, but that back line, I'm not totally convinced is going to do a better job than Arsenal's. Liverpool, they're one injury away in that back line from a bit of a crisis, especially with Joe Gomez out. Arsenal, just about. I've gone for them.
Three different titles.
I do think it's so weird with Arsenal. Everyone always counts them out, and maybe this is just me looking at football Twitter. But some of the shouts I've seen of Arsenal finishing 4th, or I'm just what have you not been paying attention the last few years? I feel that kind of bottler reputation suddenly kind of trumps the actual evidence.
Fair enough. 3 different title winners predicted. I've got, we're actually coming on to our hot takes later in the show, but my mini hot take is for the first time in Premier League history, the top 4 doesn't change in order as well. So it'll be Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Chelsea for me.
Is that the first time that would have happened?
That's the first time in Premier League history that would have happened. And then in 5th, it is on the condition that they don't lose Carlos Baleba. But I think Brighton could finish 5th.
Mm.
I'm really, really strong on Brighton this year. I think they had so many injury issues last year. And looking back, they were only 5 points off 5th last year. And that was Newcastle, who might well lose Isak. Villa, we've already talked about their struggles to recruit, the fact they've lost Asensio and Rashford. Brighton had so many injury issues last year. Solly March, who else was injured? O'Reilly, Kadioglu. I think they've really strengthened in their defence in particular. De Kuyper, Buscaglia, I think is a really good addition. They'll be looking to move on from Lewis Dunk, but they've had a really good pre-season as well. I think Brighton, going into a year where Fabian Herzl has now had a year to adapt to the league, and I do think Jorginho Rutter can pick up the mantle from João Pedro as well. Estupiñán, they've brought in some excellent left-backs. So I think they're in a really good position to have an excellent season, Brighton. That's kind of my mini hot take as well. Let's talk relegation up next, because I think we're all kind of praying that it's a little bit, maybe this is just my Sunderland hat, but it's a bit more competitive than in the previous couple of years. I mean, Nieve, if you had to go your sort of 16th downwards or 17th downwards, who's in that discussion?
I think Leeds and Burnley, sadly, I think I'd put them in the relegation zone at the moment. And whereas Sunderland, I think if I had to pick one that might stay up,
I like Nieve.
then I think, but you know, it's so difficult.
There is a lot of change there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of change, but it needed to happen, didn't it? I think the problem we've got, and I'm a culprit of this, we're all a culprit of this, is when teams are signing players that we don't really know, we can make a negative assumption on them. And so that could be the case with like Leeds, for example. But the thing with Leeds, I think there's just a few bits where I think they just still look a bit weak in terms of getting goals, for example. And obviously I know they were looking at Rodrigo Muniz, weren't they, at Fulham? And that's taken a little bit of time. And now they're looking at Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who, like, no disrespect to Calvert-Lewin, that's a bit of a down for me. Like, that's quite a level down. And again, I could be making this up, but I'd mentioned it before to you. I'd noticed it almost feels like their ambition leads. They've got great ambition with who they want to sign, but if they're not getting them, then you can have all that ambition, but you've got to start actually getting some names in. So again, like between now and the end of the window, that could change and they could get them and it could give them a fighting chance. With Sunderland, yeah, I think Jacques is a fantastic signing. I think Adingra is a really good signing. Diarra is a really good signing, and it feels like we've not just got players who've shown great quality, but players who on a physical level I think can cope with the Premier League from what I've seen. So I think that's a key thing for me. I really like the manager. I really like Regis Lebris. And then if I had to put a team in the relegation zone instead of them, the team in mind, again, I'm clutching at straws. I'm thinking, what's a reason why you might struggle? And I thought potentially Brentford. And you know, we know that they're so good at handling situations and they're such a well-run club, but it is an awful lot of change that they're going to have to deal with. And you look at like Bournemouth, for example, who've also got a lot of change, but they've kept hold of the manager, who is probably the most important asset of all. Whereas with Brentford, not only have they lost a number of players, they've also lost their manager. And it's going to be so fascinating to see how they cope with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it feels like that big a hot take to have Brentford as down as strugglers this year. I mean, in defence of Keith Andrews, Brentford are so forward-thinking and never seem to really miss a beat in terms of their recruitment and their kind of sort of replacement of managers. And the fact that he was working at the club last year suggests to me that they thought he was literally the best that they could get, because they had the entire summer to sign someone, and they went with, we're going to appoint our set piece coach, which maybe speaks to his abilities as a coach. But I agree with you. I think if Visser leaves as well, and Buma and Visser were, I think, directly involved in 75% of their league goals last year, which was the same as Salah and Diaz, who was Liverpool's second top scorer, which just goes to show how important that double act were to Brentford. But I actually think one of the biggest departures is Christian Norgard in midfield as well, in terms of the way he drives that team forward. Well, last year, really, in terms of goals and assists as well, but the year before, in terms of his defensive output. They've got a new goalkeeper, even though Kelleher, I think, will probably be an upgrade on Flecken, but that's still another change.
Flecken was super important, though.
Flecken had a great year last year, but I just think long-term, that's maybe not the worst replacement. But let's see where Brentford are at by the end of August. A lot could change there, but for me, I'm with you. I've got them, Leeds and Burnley going down. I'm sorry to say, Burnley fans, the thing that I'm most sure about in the entire Premier League is that Burnley are 20th.
Yeah.
I just don't think they've got enough goals on that side. I think their top scorer was Josh Brownhill last year with 18 in the Championship, and they've lost their USP, which was James Trafford last year as well, with I think it was close to 30 clean sheets. So for me, Burnley are 20th, and then I think Leeds, Brentford, and I do think Sunderland just survive.
Yeah, I've gone pretty similar. Just one change in there, but yeah, Burnley, I've gone bottom. Basically echoing what you've said, Dukes, there. Like the goals, Armando Broja, I think is a huge gamble, the money that they've spent on him and expecting him to suddenly step up. But I also think had a managerial capability as well. Scott Parker has had an amazing record in the Championship, but he has consistently underperformed as a Premier League manager. You think about, when he brought Bournemouth up with a huge points tally and then was sacked after 4 games, probably a bit unfairly, but then Gary O'Neill did such a good job after him with a really poor squad, at least for the first half of that 22-23 season before they had their takeover.
And they conceded so many goals in their first 4 games.
Yeah, massive. Was it like 7-0 against Liverpool? And then you think back to that Fulham team that he had, which actually was pretty stacked actually when you look back at it, and they really struggled too. So I worry about that. In terms of managerial stability, in terms of style of play. Obviously, they were more defensively sound last year. Well, stupidly defensively sound, but like you say, Trafford's gone. I think there's a bit of destabilisation there. I think with Leeds as well, I think just the question marks over Daniel Farke give me a bad feeling about them this year. I don't think you should be going into a Premier League season with your manager having so many question marks over you, especially given that, he did bring them up last year. I just feel like there should be a more positive feeling around a club and a manager. And they just haven't done quite as much work as, say, Sunderland have. Sunderland could well go down, but I've got them just about scraping it. I think also the Stadium of Light, back in the Premier League after nearly 10 years, I think that's going to have a big effect. Almost similar to what we saw with the City Ground with Nottingham Forest. And I guess you can draw some parallels there because Nottingham Forest spent huge amounts of money to just about scrape by for those first couple of years in the Prem. But I do think the Stadium of Light's going to play a big role. And then 18th, I've got Wolves. Ooh, okay. I don't know. This might be really silly because I do think they've actually signed a couple of decent players, but Cunha's left, Nori's left. Vitor Pereira did improve them a lot last year, and I do really like their midfield in particular. I think it could be quite a squabble down there, and I just think with Brentford, who I think will struggle for sure, and I imagine will be like 15th or 16th. There's just something in there still being, I don't know. I feel like the hangover of Thomas Frank, I think, might get Brentford through. I know they've lost key players, but their recruitment generally has been very sound over the years. And I just wonder whether with Keith Andrews there, he doesn't need to change too much from what has gone before. I feel like especially when the manager's been there for so long, the kind of patterns that he's taught the players can stick around for a little bit afterwards. And I did actually go and see them in a pre-season friendly last week against Borussia Mönchengladbach.
First-hand
research. And I wasn't very impressed. I did come away from it being like, I think they're going to struggle. Igor Thiago looked very, very isolated up there. And especially a striker coming off the kind of injury record he's got. I do worry for him a little bit, but then I don't know, like if they sign Dango Ouattara from Bournemouth, that would be a huge coup. I think he'd be perfect
as well. From
and they've really also already got, obviously they've got Damsgaard and Chardin. When you look at established Premier League clubs, which Brentford are now, and you've got players like that we know are quality Premier League players, it does beg the question, when I say Sunderland to stay up, am I doing this because I think it will happen, or am I doing this because I kind of want it to happen? Yeah. And perhaps not exclusively Sunderland, but just the idea of a newly promoted club coming up and staying up. I'm just desperate for that to happen, kind of thing. So am I actually just trying to put this into the air? Yeah. I think the Burnley finishing dead last, the only thing with that is I'd say, I think because their defensive stability was so good in the Championship, I actually think it's almost as if it's been decided that they weren't a good goal scoring team, but they were across the team. They were very capable of scoring goals. For me, with them, my hesitation is that that sort of defensive stability, losing Trafford and also CJ Egan-Riley, which is 2 big parts of your back sort of 5 players, that concerns me with them. And also, like you've just said, with Armando Broja, who's got packs of talent but such injury issues in the last couple of years, that's what's concerning me too, because if you're going to spend, what was it, like 20 million or so for him, if you're going to spend that level of money on a player, you really want that to be a player who's playing every game. So hopefully he will be able to play a lot.
Yeah, I think the thing that people that didn't necessarily spend that much time watching Leeds, Burnley and Sunderland last year is that Sunderland were a distant fourth in the Championship. Like, the gap between Leeds and Burnley was the same as Sunderland in 4th and 17th place Oxford United. So Sunderland had so much work to do. And we've now spent, I think, the third most of a newly promoted side since 2018-19. And actually, interestingly, the two sides that spent more, one of which is Nottingham Forest when they came up, they survived as well. And we've just gone past Ipswich, who obviously didn't survive last year as well. So we have spent a vast amount of money. And you're looking at a side that have probably going to start 2 new wingers, probably alongside Mayenta to begin with, an entirely new midfield, probably 2 new centre-backs, a new left-back and a new goalkeeper. It's a lot of fun, but we just have no idea how this is going to work. And we're still making signings now. There's still speculation we're going to sign Dovbyk or Openda, which feels like a pipe dream. But it does feel like they've got at least one more signing lined up. So there's just so much change there. I'm just going to try and enjoy it as much as possible. But I'm not 100% confident Sunderland are going to stay up before all Burnley fans get angry with me. Let's move on from the relegation battle and talk about our shock overperformers and shock underperformers. Nieve, who's your shock overperformer?
I think the fact that I put Man
United could be up there.
Because the more I think about it as well, and the more I'm thinking about, like, even if you took Isak out of that Newcastle team, you look at that 11 they can field, and it's a settled team as well. And you look at Villa's settled team, oh my gosh. Who are you, Nieve? What have you done? Am I actually Nieve? So that's right up there. But then I also think there's this idea that when there's certain teams that might be in a certain position each season, and when they overperform one year, it's kind of like there's this bias in our head that the next season they'll go back to normal or they'll finish a bit lower. And the teams that I think that of is maybe someone like a Palace. I think a lot of people now have them sort of finish maybe back to sort of being 12th, 13th again, around that. But I don't know. I feel like if they can I don't know if they'll be able to keep hold of Eze or not, but the key thing is they can keep hold of Glasner and actually have a little bit of movement in the window. Like, don't be scared of signing a couple of names, guys, because I think they're on the cusp of something really brilliant. That Palace team is so good, and they've got a formula of attacking that really works. And I actually think that they might be able to find a way to make that work if they sold Eze with a replacement too under Glasner too. So I think that if they just gave him a little bit more to bite into, I think Palace could have another really successful season, and that might end up being a higher position in the league this time round as opposed to the cup run that they had. So yeah, I think they could be someone who could hover a bit higher than people think.
For sure. This is where the perils of making your predictions before the window closes is the issue, because you don't know whether Cherki and Eze are staying. And obviously that's going to have a huge ramifications on who they bring in and where they're expected to finish. But I'm with you. I think Palace will be very safe. Even if they lose them, I think they'll be very safe because I do back them to get those replacements right. Mikey, who would be your shock overperformer and underperformer?
I'm going to slightly repeat one of your sentiments earlier. I think Brighton. I don't think it's going to be that much of a shock because they finished 8th last year.
No European football as well, which is a big bonus.
That is a big bonus. But I do just think... I think because the stories of Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth last year were so, captured the imagination so much. I think, especially with Nottingham Forest, with their history, and then I guess Bournemouth with, the kind of the Huijsen story, just their style of football. And the fact I think that Brighton are just such a well-established Premier League side now. I feel like people slept a little bit on just how impressive they were, especially, Hertzler, the youngest manager in the league, having such a strong start. But I think they're just going to go from strength to strength, to be honest. Like, I agree with you. I think Rutter, there is pressure on him to step into, the fold in João Pedro's absence, but he played enough last year and impressed enough last year. I think he'll be absolutely fine. De Kuyper at left back, I think, is maybe even an upgrade on this Stupinian in terms of what we've seen, the output we've seen from him, in his last couple of years at the club. They've also easily kept hold of Kaoru Matoma. who
Despite
like
Bayern being
who
linked,
is still like one of the best left wingers in the league, if not one of the best left wingers in Europe. And then they've just got so much depth all across the field that they are pretty well proofed from like an injury crisis. You know, even if they were in Europe, I would still back them to have a strong season. But like you say, just one game a week, I think they're going to be really, really fresh. They've got 2 teenage strikers in who, you know, can play back up to Danny Welbeck once they're fit. You know, someone like Mats Wiefer, I back to have, you know, a much better second season than his first season. Someone like Yassine Ayari, I thought it impressed last year and is still really young. You know, I think he'll have a really good second season. I think Brighton will challenge for the Champions League places. I agree. I think they will just miss out, but I would not be at all surprised to see them leapfrog Newcastle into 6th, and then Villa they're 6th, Brighton 6th, something like that. I feel like they will give it a really good go. They're my. I guess they're not that much of it. That's not even that much of an overperformance. But given the rest of the mid-table feels like it is in danger of dropping off a bit, Brighton are the one team that I'm like, you know what, you could actually improve on last season.
Love it. In agreement there. I'm not sure whether it's like the fact the Premier League's back on, it's just general excitement levels, but if you can hear my stomach as well, I'm sorry, it's really rumbling next to this.
It's the pie.
It's so I did smash a pie before this as well. There's too much going on internally in terms of nerves and pie. Right, in terms of an overperformer, I think Everton feel like a very safe bet almost. It's almost a bit of a boring shot. I think we talked about it extensively, or these two did with Carl Anka on the Sky Mobile transfer.
So what
show
is an
overperformance
for Everton?
Just no issues with relegation whatsoever. Like
for who?
For Everton.
For Everton.
For like, I think a sort of 9th to 12th year for Everton, given they're moving into a new stadium, I think that'd be really, really good. And it feels like so many of their best seasons in recent years have relied on one individual, whether it was Richarlison when he was there, or Calvert-Lewin when he was in better form, or Iliman Ndiaye last year. It feels like there are so many more players that can chip in and do it consistently across the season now. It always used to be Pickford as well in the final 3-4 games would turn into Gordon Banks as well. And that just doesn't feel like it's going to be required now, because they do have some real sprinkling of talent. And I think they'll sign a few more as well, because they lost so many players at the end of their contracts. And I do remember saying in sort of mid-July, have a look at Everton's squad and how thin it was. And all their fans were like, look, we're just going to trust the Friedkin group. We'll bring in some players. And it looks like the fruits of that lack of panic are really coming through now.
I think they do. I think they do need a midfielder though, like desperately. Like Gay,
big pressure on Gay.
Like because Gay's gonna probably go to AFCON.
James Garner's brilliant.
James Garner's great, but then Gay's probably going to go to AFCON, December, January, and then who is there? I know Carl was saying on the transfer show that Dewsbury Hall can do a job back there, but I'm still a little bit.
I think that's
worried
a waste
there.
of Dewsbury Hall as well.
I think you'd hope they get someone in, but I think sure. I'm just a little bit. There's a few question marks like centre back, right back, and or right back in particular, and central midfield. That.
And then my shock underperformer, I'm actually going Man City, not because they won't be better than last year. I don't personally subscribe to the idea that they're going to be back up to sort of 85, 90 points for me personally. And I'm not sure whether anyone will be this year. Maybe Arsenal, maybe Liverpool, but I think they'll be the closest to it. But I just think Man City, so much change once again. We're like really straddling eras in that side now. De Bruyne leaving, I think, will be a bigger impact than people think, even though I do think Ryan Cherki's a phenomenal player. You need to see Phil Foden. I need to see more evidence of Phil Foden being back to his previous best as well. I'm not sure about Matheus Nunes playing an entire season at right back. I think Aït-Nouri can be exposed at left back as well. I just have my doubts about Man City, even though I do agree with Nieve that Reijnders and Rodri have the makings of a really nice duo in midfield. I just don't think that we're going to see the City of that 4-peat back to that sort of level. So that is my shock underperformer, if you can even include that. Did you guys have your shock underperformers? I can't remember.
I was torn between Newcastle and Nottingham Forest.
You're not a believer in Forest?
I don't think they've had a terrible summer, but I just think it's a bit of a boring thing to revert back to, but they did overperform massively last season. That I just wonder whether Nuno can repeat the trick again.
What is an underperformance then? What position would they have to finish?
I think they could finish below 13th. I think they could finish that low. The competition around mid-table, I know there's a number of teams who could drop off, but I still think it's pretty tight in there. And then when you consider that you're expecting United and Spurs to perform better than last year, I just think Forest could get caught up in that, and also with the Europa League campaign, they've not had to deal with that before. That squad is still not quite, doesn't have quite enough depth for me across the field. I think they've done really well to keep hold of the defence. I think that like the back line will be what saves them from having like any scares.
Midfield is good as well.
Midfield is good. It is good. I just see the goals drying up a bit. I think losing Elanga, I think he was their most pivotal attacker aside from Morgan Gibbs-White last year. I think there's a lot of pressure on Ndoye to kind of, give them better or match Elanga's output on the right.
He's only really had one exceptional year for Bologna as well.
And I also think Chris, I don't know, I feel like Chris Wood might revert to the mean as well. I can see teams sitting off Forest a lot more this year, given what the damage that they did to a number of teams last year. So I think that would probably be my main rationale behind it.
I think Ndoye, though, I think that he had a really good year at Bologna. I think he suits them really well. And the good thing about having a system in place that Nuno developed with Forest is that you can go and get players that will just can nicely fit in. So there's not too much, will they, won't they do well. I feel like Ndoye, I think it's going to be a given that he'll fit right into that team, like up and down. He's absolutely fantastic at that. There's quite a lot of people have had Forest quite low down, like bottom half of the table, sort of around the 14th. I actually think that because their style is, for the most part, off the ball, and because he's produced a team of grafters, I actually think it almost takes away from the fact that there's some real quality players in that team as well, like on the ball. And when you see glimpses of it, like when you see glimpses of Elliot Anderson and Gibbs-White having the chance on the ball, and Murillo as well on the ball, like their technique and quality is really good. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, they've kept that back line together as well, which was such a USP for them last year. Let's talk about best signing and worst signing.
Who are your underperformers?
Oh yeah, sorry, Nieve. Who are your underperformers?
Underperformers. The team I'm worried about at the moment is probably West Ham, because I'm just not sure what direction that they're going in. I'm not sure what their plan is in terms of signings, in terms of who the people making the footballing decisions. I felt as if, as we were all caught up in sort of United and Tottenham and how they finished the season, it almost distracted from the fact that West Ham also they were even worse, falling apart. Just slowly in front of our eyes. And there's been a few departures. I mean, there were departures you'd expect, but still departures nonetheless. And I think there's a bit of work to be done for them.
Absolutely. Right, let's get into best signing and worst signing. Obviously, still a few weeks of the window to go. Let's do these fairly quickly because Nieve has got a train to catch as well. Nieve, your best signing of the summer?
I'm going to shock you to the core and I'm going to pick a Serie A player.
Nice.
I know, Nieve. Do you watch Italian football, Nieve? Tijjani Reijnders, because I think the improvement, I think the way that it'll facilitate everyone else, takes off a bit of burden. And then when Rodri does come back, I think it's going to form a really good midfield.
So physical. It should be amazing. I mean, Mikey.
I was kind of torn between... I do love the Granit Xhaka signing at Sunderland, but I'll leave that to you, Dukes. Also, Milos Kerkez as well. Maybe it's just from watching him in that Community Shield. I just think he's going to be absolutely electric for Liverpool, and he already looks like he's formed really good understanding with Ekitike and Wirtz. I just absolutely love that signing. But I'm going to go for Zubimendi at Arsenal. Almost similar to Reijnders at City. I just think he's he has the ability to completely transform the way that Arsenal function in midfield. We could see like Declan Rice's numbers pop off because of him. Like I was saying, Martinelli as well. I'm just really, really excited to see Arsenal with Zubimendi. And it happened so well. It's been almost a certainty since like January that I feel like it's now almost kind of gone under the radar. What a big piece of business that was. Like Liverpool were desperate for him this time last year, and Arsenal have got him, and he could be the difference maker in the title race.
I like it. We've worked together for too long because I have Xhaka, Zubimendi written down. I was quite reluctant to. I mean, what will define this season in many ways will be which the strikers have the best year. But I'm quite reluctant at the moment to kind of back any of them as the best, because I actually really like all of them as individual players as well. But it's so difficult to predict in terms of how they'll work with their teammates, how they'll adapt to the country, the new style of play, the pressure. I think all of them have a lot of brilliant traits that should translate pretty well to the Premier League. It was only a few years ago that people were bemoaning kind of the death of the physical number 9, and now United, Chelsea, City. Well, City have one in Haaland, but Arsenal and Liverpool all bought them this summer. It's great to see in many ways. I'm going to go, I mean, it was my big shout at the episode, Brighton to finish 5th. I think Maxime de Kuyper will be brilliant at left back for Brighton. He's got fantastic delivery. He was 3rd in Belgium for chances created last year. Xhaka is the obvious one from a Sunderland perspective, but I think he's been so widely talked about. So I'll go with de Kuyper. In terms of my worst signing, and this isn't really about the player, it's about where it's left Arsenal short in different areas. I think Noni Madueke might be a bit of a mistake in the long term. If Spurs go and sign Eze, if Man City go and sign Rodrigo, at the moment it does feel like Arsenal have left themselves short in that area. And I don't think he's a significant upgrade on the left than Gabriel Martinelli at his best. And I don't think it would have been a disaster to have Ethan Nwaneri backing up Saka for another year on the right. So it just feels like 45, 50 million pounds that Arsenal could have used in a different area for me. But again, it does feel quite harsh, and that petition after he signed was absolutely ridiculous. Nieve, who was your worst signing so far?
You're going to resent me, but I can't. I genuinely, right, I was trying my best to come up with somebody, but I can't bring myself to say a name until I see him kick a ball.
Fair.
I just really can't difficult. Do it.
I think it's really...
You get clipped up, Nieve. You know, you've got your reputation as the great predictor.
That's going to be gone after the United game. I usually like you, Nieve, but Man United finish.
That will go.
First prediction of the episode.
If United finish 5th, we will see that clip for the rest of time. It will be the Haaland Rory Jennings moment. Mikey, did you come out with a worst signing?
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's really, really difficult. And I think we were chatting about it off camera. I just don't think Premier League clubs make that many bad signings these days. You know, when we first started working in YouTube, I feel like we used to just make video after video about the terrible signings that clubs are making, and generally were proven right. These days, it's just much harder to do because, like, you know, clubs' recruitment is just a lot more savvy.
It's often injury related as well, which is so brutal.
And also, I think Premier League clubs now have the pick of Europe's top talent more so than they did 10 years ago. The gap in wealth has just, you know, it's widened that much. And with that, you know, the quality of recruitment teams and scouts now working the Premier League, and, you know, just the whole setups have just become ridiculous. But I do think Brozier to Burnley is a massive risk. I just think it's difficult to bank on him scoring a ton of goals, and I think Burnley are going to need that this season. I also looked at Lucas and Mecha to Leeds, although that's a free transfer, so I can't really go that wrong, but like his scoring record isn't that great. And again, Leeds need a centre forward. If Joel Perreault can't step up to the Premier League, then they need someone to be able to back him up. Brozier, I think, just about takes it for me.
Okay, let's quickly wrap up the show with a hot take. My hot take is that no newly promoted side finishes with less than 20 points. I think they will all be better than people think, which wasn't done last year. Southampton nearly broke the record in terms of that unwanted record. And the season before, Sheffield United finished with 16. The exodus of talent from the mid-table clubs means that the newly promoted sides have a much, much better chance of making it competitive.
I will say, and it sort of plays into something you mentioned earlier in terms of you not seeing City getting a certain amount of points. I think a very low amount of points could win you the title. I'm going to go ahead. The lowest title winning points team may have been United in the 90s. I think they won the title with like 75 points.
Leicester was pretty low as well.
And I reckon you can win the title with points that begin with a 7.
Oh,
really?
Yeah,
huge.
Oof, I don't know if I'd go that bold. It's gonna be if both of your hot takes come true, it could be like a
real melting pot.
It could actually be like a Premier League table from 1996. My hot take doesn't feel as hot anymore after hearing yours. But Brentford, I kind of said it earlier. I think Brentford will stay up. I've just seen a lot of people downplaying Brentford a lot in the last couple of weeks. So maybe it's a bit influenced by like, you know, the general conversations around at the moment. But I feel like Brentford will stay up and they'll be okay. Jordan Henderson will.
It could be one of those where in the first month of the season, Brentford carry on where they've left off in previous seasons in terms of the style, and you're like, why on earth was I ever concerned about them? It could be genuinely that.
The one thing that did stand out when I was watching them the other night as well, the long throws. They're cooking with the long throws.
Well.
I mean, I think Keith Andrews, obviously, he is the throw-in man, and they've gone even harder on that. I can't remember who. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, love to hear it, guys. We don't really have a clue, but that was a lot of fun. We made a lot of predictions. Get yours in the comment section. Let us know where we were right. Let us know rather where we were wrong. Big thanks to Nieve for joining the panel this week, as ever. Absolutely brilliant. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.